So we have no minutes, right? I didn't get any.
No minutes. 30 seconds.
Facing over here. Okay. Thank you.
You going to be ready in 10 seconds?
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission for March 10th, 2015. You have all seen the agenda. Are there any comments?
Yeah.
Hearing none, we will adopt it as submitted. There are no minutes yet from February 24th. Is there a motion to approve the warrant of March 11th?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Is there public comment at this time?
That would be you.
Yeah, that would be you. And if you'd come up to the microphone, please. Yes.
Here?
Yes.
So my name is Nancy Bean, and I am the Executive Director of the Nantucket Wine Festival. And I am here today to hopefully be able to have a conversation about the event that's proposed to happen at the Nantucket Memorial Airport again this year. It's an event that we have done annually for the last about 7 years.
All right. Excuse me. I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment to let the other commissioners know that there has been some correspondence back and forth between the airport administration and Ms. Bean since we last met. And we have given an indication of our, shall we say, lack of enthusiasm about this event. But Ms. Bean asked if she could come and talk about it, and she was informed, I believe, that public comment was the time to do that. So with your indulgence, we'll go forward with this. We cannot take a vote on this matter tonight because it's not on the posted agenda. We could, if Ms. Bean wants us to, wants some indication of our feeling, we could take a straw vote at the end of this, and then we could, that would be an indication to her, and then we could have a formal vote next time. Is that our meet with everybody's satisfaction? And I would like to limit this to 10 to 15 minutes if I could.
Sure.
Sure.
Well, I guess everybody's familiar with the event and what it is and what our application was for. We have done this for, I believe, 7 years, but the first years of this, it was held over at the Ocean Wings private hangar, and last year we had it at the Nantucket Airport hangar number 1. We went through what some of the issues had been last year, where the airport felt that there was a lack of organization or communication on our part, and acknowledged that, and understand exactly where there were some things that were late in happening, or some things we weren't sure whose responsibility it was. I think that it was possibly something new for the airport also to do, to rent out the hangar like that and to do a private event like this. So there was a learning curve, and certainly some things that needed some improvement. And so after we had a meeting here, am I talking into this?
Yes.
I went back and, promised to come back with something addressing all of the things that were concerns, having a very full production schedule, kind of on the half-hour increment of exactly how we would set up the event, build the event, host the event, break down the event, and who would be responsible for what, so it would be very clearly communicated. Right around that time, we had some terrible weather, and so it was a little challenging to collect all of the things that I needed to collect, like the specific specs and airport and aircraft information from the vendors that are bringing the planes. But I was able to collect it all, put together sort of comprehensive plan, keeping in mind a lot of the things that I learned from our meeting, like the hours of staff hours, so that there would be no overtime for any of the airport staff to have to stay on board to do things like position boundaries outside the hangar, things like that. So we developed the production schedule thoughtfully so that it wouldn't cause any overtime or extra attention. We changed having 2 aircraft that could simply just taxi over versus having a helicopter that needs to be towed. That adds a little bit more extra labor on the part of the airport. We eliminated that. We took into consideration everything that we learned at the meeting that day and collected all the information. And literally on the day that Tom sent me an email saying I was supposed to hear back from you, this is showing a lack of disregard or some disrespect in not getting this back to us in a timely manner. I literally hit reply with all of those materials because they were all together. I was waiting for Ann McAndrew at the Selectman's office to let me know that my permitting had indeed gone through, and it did. So our insurance, our permitting, the production schedule, all the contact information with the vendors doing this are all lined up and intact, and I feel that we've addressed all of the areas that were of a concern to the airport so that this wouldn't be labor intensive and take away from their main focus of obviously running the airport. It is just a 2-hour event. It requires their time for getting aircraft out of the hangar and getting the hangar prepped. We've offered to assist in any way that we can with that, but we did leave the hangar in the way that we found it. Cleaned, and just hope that you can reconsider the first response of rejecting our application for this, because it's an event that's well received by the community. It's looked forward to. The attendees of the festival really enjoy it. The festival brings a lot of commerce to the island, and the way that we can do this festival is by having sponsors, and this is one of our sponsor activations. So we'll hope that, given that we've responded to the concerns that the airport had and addressed them, that you would reconsider that. And if there's anything else that you need us to do or address or change or alter, we're very happy to do that. The event now is in 9 weeks from now, and so we're hoping that we can make this happen.
Thank you. I'm going to give Mr. Rafter a chance to respond in just a moment, but before he does, I think there are 2 issues here that you should be aware of. One of them is sort of specifically related to the wine festival last year, this year, and so forth. The second is a larger policy issue, which we've just sort of recently come to focus on, which is that if a group or organization wants to do an event of some kind, whether it be a private individual, as somebody said, who wants to do a wedding on the steps of their private jet, or a group such as yours that wants to do a full-blown party, there are a lot of implications for the airport when it's not directly connected with a tenant who has a facility here. When it's our facility or or in essence nobody's facility, and so I think we're focusing on both those issues. I mean, we don't want to open the floodgates to a lot of people coming in here and asking for events, and for the very reason you like it, other people might like it for the same reason. And when you partnered with Ocean Wings, it was a lot easier from our perspective. It wasn't easy, but it was a lot easier from our perspective because of the fact that you had that base of operations and working with them. And there was somebody who we knew and took some responsibility for what went on, which doesn't really happen now, other than yourselves. So that's one issue. And then the second issue relates specifically to what's happened in the last couple of years. And Tom, do you want to?
Yeah, just as Ms. Bean said, we did meet. We had a very forthright meeting, explained our concerns, and we were very concerned that we were not getting a timely response, and she did immediately forward to us their plan, There are probably some, other details that we need to work out if, in fact, it were to go forward. But everything she did say, is true. And we were, as I said, very open about our concerns from last year. And I think a number of those have been addressed in the plan. There are some other things that are still needed if we were to move forward. But I think the greater concern is the fact that it is not a tenant where we have an agreement that, ensures that they're going to abide by all regulations and things. And it could be a precedent-setting thing if we start opening up the hangars now.
What about the issue, specifically the issue of security as related to this event?
Security, even in the past, the wine festival has hired police officers. It was
Who are
more-
present on the tarmac?
They were there. They were badged officers. They were on the tarmac. It was more. Our concerns were more with our personnel and having to set up the barriers and position the aircraft, and it was not very well organized in the past. And Ms. Bean explained to us why and what happened previously, and has given us some assurances that it will not happen again that way. So.
I just have one comment. You mentioned it was a 2-hour thing, but anything catered is not a 2-hour. It's 5 or 6 hours, to the best of my knowledge.
And I believe that's what she was saying. It's a 2-hour event, but they recognize now what it takes for
Right.
us to set it up and
And
to
to
have
clear
the
it,
caterers
uh-huh.
come in, to have everything, all the setup, preparation, emptying the hangar, moving the aircraft over, positioning, that type of
Do we
thing.
charge for any of those services, or are we doing?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And if I can see, we did put into the sort of a detailed kind of production outline that goes minute by minute, when the porta potties arrive, when the hangar gets cleaned, when the barriers get positioned, when we load in, when we load out, and acknowledge that that's happening throughout the day on the part of the wine festival too, because we're on site doing that setup and then that breakdown. So it is just a 2-hour. I was only referring to the 2-hour event in that it's not like an all-day party or something
Well, that I
that's,
understood, but there's more time involved in a 2-hour event.
absolutely, absolutely. And there are about, I think last year we had about 100 attendees at it. It's not a big, just to note, it isn't a big, wild, party that way. It's more a social hour. One thing I did want to address, I know that I certainly understand the concern of opening this up to just anybody saying, hey, I want to go have my birthday party over at the airport. The reason that this is at the airport, aside from it being a very cool venue, is that we didn't come up with an idea to do a hangar party and then say, hey, let's get a sponsor. Wheels Up Aviation, who is a client, I don't know how you call it, client of the airport.
A user.
User. Was a user, heavy user of the airport, came to us. In the past, it had been NetJets. It's been different private jet aviation companies who utilize ACK that came to us and said, we'd like to do a party. And they do this in other markets. And so they sort of, were mimicking this after, like we're doing one of these for them in Dulles Airport in a hangar, similar kind of event for them. But that's the connection. It isn't just a random, let's have a party at the airport. It's because it is a private jet or aircraft company that's sponsoring this and asking for it.
Can I, if I may, you had also mentioned in our meeting some connection to Washington and promoting the actual event here in Washington. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little?
Yeah, well, so Wheels Up as a sponsor, and for them, a huge focus is on Nantucket. That's why they're sponsoring our festival and doing this, and sponsor other events on the island. Another area of focus for them is D.C., and opening up that channel between D.C. and ACK is a big focus for them. So part of their sponsorship with us is that we agree to do some other promotion for them prior to the festival. And we thought this would be in Westchester County. That's where it was going to be, at the airport. And it turned out that they want us to do it at Dulles. And so we're doing on April 16th an event for Wheels Up that promotes both the Nantucket Wine Festival, ACK, and Wheels Up. So we go down there and do this event down there and have all kinds of Nantucket-related things at that, and everybody invited to it is from the D.C. area.
So I just wanted
May I
to
add one
make
other
sure
point
we
of clarification? The Nantucket Wine Festival is a for-profit organization, is it not?
The Nantucket Wine Festival is a business. The Nantucket Wine Festival Charitable Foundation is a charitable foundation, 501c3, because
But
all
this is
of
being
the-
operated by the Wine Festival.
This event is operated by the Wine Festival, because any event that we do in a licensed facility, like the White Elephant or the Yacht Club or anything like that, has to be done as a charitable event, because they're a licensed facility. So we have charitable wine tasting permits, and 51% of the proceeds from all of those events has to go to charity.
But that's not true in this case.
That's not true in this one. This is a private event for Wheels Up. It's not a profitable event, meaning we're not making money on it because it's a private event for Wheels Up. So it's not in that capacity. But no, this is not a charitable event. This is a private event.
So people pay to go to this event, in other words,
There's about 3/4 of the who it's maybe, so we had 100 attendees last year. We probably had 25 people pay, and 75 were invited guests.
okay.
Yeah.
I know the Wine Festival has a long list of things you can go see. Could anybody just go to this thing at the airport if they wanted to? Pay?
If they wanted to, and there were still tickets available, first people are invited as guests from Wheels Up, and then there's a limited number of tickets sold, because the intent is not to have hundreds of people at it.
So, but most of the people that are invited are
Tom.
users of Wheels Up.
Is your mic
mic
on?
There we are.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I guess the idea is that it's potential ones.
Okay.
You know, it would be people.
It's a
from the
sales
White
event for
Elephant.
So
Wheels
then,
Up.
I'm trying to get at that. Yeah, that's okay.
It sounds like it's a
I mean,
sales event.
they're networking. It's also just to thank people who are affiliated, who are VIPs and come to the festival and are around. So there's a big invitation list, and then there's people can certainly just go and buy tickets to it.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I don't know if this is a concern of ours or not, but how about underage drinking?
There's no underage drinking because you have to be 21 or over to attend, and that's checked.
Okay.
As any event that we have any alcohol in, only our events on Children's Beach in the culinary tent can children come to.
thank
Anything else is, 21.
Have you established a maximum number of people that would be allowed? In other words, will there be a cutoff on your ticket sales?
Of people that can attend?
Right.
Yeah, it's 175.
Okay. And is there
Yeah.
a way that sort of to police that to some extent?
Well, the way anybody who's coming, so we have online ticket sales,
Mm-hmm.
so everything is tracked. And even if somebody comes as a guest who was invited, their name has to route through that system because they then print out something that gets them their admission.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the name of everybody who came last year. And people can't buy tickets at the door.
And in terms of the number of security people for that amount of people,
Mm-hmm.
have you gone over that with Tom? In other words, the number of officers for the 175, and does he consider that to be, again, I'm trying to think that
Sure.
from my perspective, this is a behind the gates, behind the fence, and
Sure.
security at airports being what it is.
Bob Tallman last year reviewed that and had no problem, and I think we required, or they had 2 police officers last year, whatever it was sufficient.
As long as
for
our security, that's my,
Yeah.
my concern is that the whatever you're providing has been reviewed and accepted by the administration.
In the police department, so we have, I have 62 different permits for the festival, so
Right.
it's a big, undertaking, and I sit and actually go over all of them with Lieutenant McVicker, and they say exactly, based on the number of potential people, whether we sold that many tickets or not, that's how they determine how much
That's what I was
security.
getting at with the maximum
Yeah.
cap, and that, regardless if 5 people show up, you've
It's-
planned for the 175, sort of a worst case. I think my biggest sort of concern, or just thing that I want to see so that we don't have problems, two things is one that that however much time it takes of the staff, be it indirect costs for all of these planning, that for the emptying of the hangar, in other words, that this event shouldn't in any way cost the airport, and that prior to, and again, we don't have to get into dollars and cents here, but that whether there's, I don't know the exact mechanism, some kind of a memorandum of understanding or agreement of costs.
That was discussed at our meeting, and that's why we asked for this plan, so that we could quantify what our time is it's going to take. In the past, it was estimated it would only take us a few hours, but it was much longer. And that's why, again, we said we want minute by minute, and that's what they're giving us. So.
And likewise with the setting up time that it's going to take, saying this is all day, I don't know that you're going to have an officer there the whole day. The officers, I assume, are for the party, but here you're going to have other folks. Does that mean that you have staff that needs to look, be somewhat present?
The way that typically works is that our staff, who is in the process of either emptying the hangar, cleaning it out, setting up the barricades, is also there so that to provide security.
That's sort of what I'm getting at, is just that, so that time, though, that they're there for is somehow
captured,
accounted for and allocated, and that if the manager and yourself can come up with an agreement on terms of that you're comfortable with the cost, that this doesn't reflect the burden on the airport, and that it's compensated by the festival, and that by the festival that's an acceptable figure, so that it works out for everybody, then that meets
and
at least one of my main
I
concerns.
did mention that in our meeting. We discussed and said that was one of our big concerns from last year because it cost us money. That can't happen. So.
Right, and so I guess just the last piece of that, perhaps, and you can work, that whether there needs to be some kind of, I don't know, that it's an escrow or some kind of a, agreement that says should there be cost overruns due to some unforeseen circumstance, as part of the approval from the manager, there's a guarantee, if you will, that, again, I just don't want to see that the folks running the airport have extraordinary burden on them already, and so that cost is covered, and that the security is covered are my two. And it sounds like you're pretty much there. I mean, I see this as from the administration, but those are my two.
Okay.
Can I ask one other question
Sure.
to factor into that? Excuse me. Are any other tenants dislocated by this activity?
Yes, and it's.
I shouldn't say other tenants. Are tenants
There are
dislocated?
tenants, yes, there are tenants that are moved out of the hangar, and we compensate them for whatever the daily rent was or whatever, and that would be factored into the cost. Since it's basically a half-day disruption to them, it's a nominal fee.
And they're agreeable to it?
Yes, they have been.
Okay, that's,
They've-
that could be.
They have been in the past, and one of them's Carl England, the other's, I think, Chris McLaughlin. So, if I may, too, Mr. Chairman, I just recalled in my mind when we had discussed this either last year or the prior year, I think it was 2 years ago, we had talked about special events in general and the concern about the burden and things. And I have to ask Janine to go back and look, but I think we put together either in a policy or whatever that we would limit the number because of the potential impact, so that we would prevent the onslaught of people just coming. So I'm not sure, but my mind is
Well, we can
remembering.
check that out, but I think probably we've discussed this enough at this point. And what's the pleasure of the commission?
I think if Mr. Rafter is set, agreeable to what we've planned, or decided, that was fine. I think the two concerns that Mr. Gasparo had was some of mine. So I think that, as long as it's not going to cost us any money.
As long as we charge enough to support a commercial event like this, that's fine. If we're not charging enough, then it's not fine. And I think that the judge of that is Tom.
Well, I think there are two aspects of it, if I may. Go ahead. Do you?
No,
I was going to say one of them is charging enough, and the other, be very honest, because it may happen this year, but it hasn't happened in past years, is how responsible the sponsor is in terms of running the party and giving us the information we need, giving us the assistance that we need in order to make it work for them. And so there are those two pieces of it. And I would say that if it's approved this year, I would make very clear my personal view, and it's not the commission's view, it's my own view, that if it gets screwed up again this year, it ain't going to happen again.
I think that's fine.
And that you should always come to us before you publicize it, and not put it in your program until you've gotten permission.
I agree.
Likewise.
Mr. Gasparo? All right, Mr. Rafter, are you happy with the instructions to work it out if you can, and leave it up to you ultimately whether it's the right?
Can do. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mead.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on. Pending leases and contracts. We have a few. You want to go through these quickly?
Yeah, the first is a catering agreement with Taste of Nantucket. It's our standard business fee plus 25% concession fee. Beach license agreement with Axe Surf School, again, another recurring one, $1,500 business fee. A contract with Lakes Region for $373 for additional parts for the fuel farm that were not covered under their original contract. We have to have a separate contract for that because it exceeded the other one. The contract with Jacobs Engineer for professional services for reconstruction of the north ramp, which we will be putting a grant into the FAA for that. And a contract amendment with Cobo Utility for the security upgrades to extend the expiration date. Between the snow and some challenges we've had with the interactive training system, there's an oversight in the original contract, so we need to extend that.
But that's not ready yet. Kobo? It is, okay. All right. Any questions?
Just one.
Yes, sir.
On the Jacobs, what's the timing that you're into? I'm not opposed, just curious, timing for the commencement of the project and when it
You're
would
getting
occur?
ahead of me. No, we have a meeting scheduled, I believe, in 2 weeks to go over the actual preliminary design. They've begun the work. They did some of the survey work. They've already started design.
Very good.
Do you have a question?
No.
All right. May I have a motion, please, to approve or not the contracts?
Motion to approve the contracts,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Formerly used defense site status.
As I mentioned before, 2 previous site visits had to be canceled due to the snow, but it's been rescheduled, and it's a go for this Thursday. So we're going to have the Army Corps out and identify exactly what needs to be relocated. And Johnny will be there, the tenants will be there, and come up with a plan and get that process moving, hopefully.
All right. Thank you. Any questions?
No.
General fund repayment proposal?
I haven't heard anything lately. Again, they're still working on the
All right. Let's not
actual
bring it
MOU
up
with
again.
Town Council.
Maybe they'll forget.
In whose hands is it now? The FinCom?
The
Town council.
Town Council, okay. So maybe stuck there for a while, that's okay with us.
The aircraft incentive plan, which is in your packet.
This was developed, airports have been competing for air service in the past probably 8 to 10 years, and so much so that the FAA has actually put out a guidebook as to how to craft incentive plans because some folks were going astray of the grant assurances. So the idea here is in order to develop air service, prepare this air service development program. It's a 3-year program, but some of the discounts, the maximum that you can give are only for 2 years. So if somebody comes in let's say, the second year, and it's a 2-year discount, it only goes to the term of the program itself unless the commission decides to extend it. The goal is to expand the existing service as well as attract additional service, whether it be new carriers and/or new cities. We've identified primary cities, as you can see in the document, and it includes discounts on landing fees and counter and office, and some on fuel if you sign a year-round agreement. It has also been reviewed by the compliance office in Washington at the FAA, and they've given it their approval.
This draft?
Yes.
Very good.
But we thought about making a couple changes to it.
Some minor ones.
Well, they're not so minor. Didn't we agree that we would suggest that the counter and office space discount for new unserved markets and new unserved priority markets would be eliminated?
Well, we can eliminate that if you'd like, yeah. The thought there was that if it was any new entrant carrier, it would be one, but then if they served a new market,
Well,
an unserved market.
I'm sorry, yes, we said.
Whether it's a priority or non-priority, in other words, you can't come in and serve an existing market. If you came in
Right.
and did Philadelphia,
Oh, that's-
or you did
yeah, okay.
Chattanooga, or you did Raleigh-Durham or something, anything new, basically would cue that up, so.
Do you think that's effective, Tom, in attracting anybody, or do people, are looking for a discount? I mean, I don't know if this makes any sense.
They almost expect it, the
Oh, really?
airlines now.
Okay.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, a lot of what I did here is copied from Hyannis Air Service program. It's one of the first questions that airlines will ask you when you sit to try to talk to them, what incentive plans do you have? Now, understand, because I was asked that at the meetings I went to in Denver, and I explained to them that, we're in the process of putting a plan together, and this is not nearly as robust or as big as some airports. I mean, some of them have millions of dollars, but we have very reasonable fees. We provide a lot of service for them, and I remind them of that. So, although you don't have to have such a great incentive program if you already have, reasonable fees, and it's a very strong market. So, now again, the objective here is, while we have some very strong markets, there are other markets we'd like to have service to that may not bring the return to the airline. So they may be on the fence about, determining whether or not they want to service that market. This is kind of an olive branch saying, look, we believe in it too. We'll work with you. We'll give you something. You put the service in and try it.
But didn't we I'm trying to remember our conversation this morning, but didn't we decide that for an existing tenant who served a priority, either one of the unserved priority markets or unserved markets, to, if they had a number of other flights, there was really no...
Well, this is a 25% discount for 1 year on that. The thought I had was that we did discuss this morning, and whatever you want to do is fine. My thought was a 25% discount to get an additional city started for 1 year is, I think, worth it. In other words, if whatever city we don't have, you name it, Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco, if somebody were to service one of those cities, we'd give them a 25% cut off of their office space and counter, which is, I haven't quantified it yet, but it's not a lot of money, and it's for 1 year.
Do we have enough counter space in the current airport to add, say, if American Airlines wanted to fly here from Syracuse, we got a spot for them?
Yes and no. We have space available. We have office space and counter space. Unfortunately, it's not behind, or it's not adjacent to a takeaway belt that would be not required, but where you would put it for securing or screening the bags. There is potentially another counter available in the area of the baggage belt, but the office space would be disjointed. For example, where JetBlue, or rather Rectrix, is going to go in to handle JetBlue this summer, the counter is near the baggage belt, but the office is at the other end, which, it's not comfortable, but it's not uncommon. I mean, there's some
So this summer, in the middle of the summer, if we wanted to have another airline go in there, there's not a whole lot of space to
And
put them anyway.
we are limited by town meeting vote as to the total number of footage of counter space that we can have.
There are 2 counters currently available, if I'm not mistaken. It's the old commuter counters, and has an office behind it, but again, you would have to lug the bags down to the belt. Not
But there is
the greatest,
do you
but it is
remember
available.
that, Jeanette?
Oh, what are we
There's
talking?
a town meeting vote sometime
No, I
way
don't.
back
I'm sorry.
when that
No.
restricts the
That's
number
what I'm
of
thinking that would
feet
be
of counter
disjointed.
space that we're allowed to have in the airport. Maybe we
Large.
shouldn't remember, but it's
Right.
there.
No, it's part of what the funding for the terminal, when
was
didn't
all
pass
around-
the first
yeah,
year.
it was all
and
around
came
that
back the
time,
second
yeah.
year. Yeah, I mean,
It may have even been before that. I think it had to do with...
Laura just reminded me, there is another counter that could be made available at the end of the row that is near the bag belt, but again, doesn't have an office.
So we've got room for maybe one more airline, and that's it.
Yes.
So this is not a deal where we're expanding with 10 new airlines in 10 new cities.
Well,
It's
if
pretty
US
limited.
Air wants to come in and fly to Charlotte, it would apply to them.
Okay.
US Air's already
Fine.
here, but it's unserved market.
Yeah.
does this need to be formally adopted by us? Or?
I believe so, yes.
So are we adopting it with or without the discount on the terminals, on the office space? Or the,
What do you want to do, Tom?
We could eliminate that, or we could put it for,
I just have a, I think you're going to end up playing Solomon in some of these cases. That's the only thing that worries me a little bit.
how,
I mean, as we just said, you've got, JetBlue has, 21 flights a week, something like that now. And if they added one flight from, add 3 more from Washington, they add 1 more from Pittsburgh, let's
Pittsburgh.
say, do they get the 25% discount on their?
right, it would apply to their office, and I understand what you're saying, it applies and covers them for all their flights, but in return, we're getting,
And maybe it should apply to them and not to the guy who's already here but has 2 flights.
well, that's, whatever we offer to one, we have to offer to
I
all of
understand,
them.
I understand, that's my problem.
It could be just for new entrant carriers. But again, we're limited with that, too. So given the fact that we're limited in space, we want to try to grow the market through, the folks that we have here. We could,
This
we
would
could
not,
prorate it.
this would not apply to JetBlue's Washington service.
No, because Washington's already served.
All right, let's try it, see what happens.
I would say I'm not, it's limited to a max of 1 year
Yeah,
and
right.
25%. I think the overall risk is
Yeah.
fairly low.
It gives Tom something to talk about, too, with the
That's
new
true.
client. And,
Right.
It's
Or
better
even
to have
with the
something to
existing-
talk about when you're trying to sell
Or
something.
even with
than-
the existing guys.
Yeah.
And then even the fact that the draft's been approved, reviewed as is, gives me some sort of comfort level that maybe we should try it as it is.
Your approach is absolutely right. When I looked at this, I looked at it as, let's try it. Make it 3 years max, and, if we get something out of it, we'll be lucky. But, we'll see how it works.
I would make a motion to approve, or adopt, the air incentive program as drafted.
Second?
With one
Uh,
very minor wording change on the
Yeah,
first page.
I would,
Number 2?
welcome that as a
Moving the
revision.
word.
And that would be to take the word,
I don't think we need to incorporate it in the motion. It's just
But
to adopt,
just so the other
Yeah.
commissioners know.
move the word tourism from in front of markets to after island.
Okay.
All right, is there a second to that motion to
I second.
approve the air service incentive program?
I
Is there
second.
further discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
I'm not leaving, I'm just getting more light.
All right, now we get into the rates and charges draft.
Before we get into the details, if I may, I just want to remind the Commission, this is I don't want to say an interim step, but it is between now and a full-blown rates and charges model that the master plan is creating, which will be a long-term look at our rates and charges, quantifying them, and ensuring that we have sufficient funds to operate the airport and proceed with our capital program. So there's a financial feasibility portion of the master plan that will be done, and if any of these changes are adopted or accepted, they will go into that mix and into that calculation. But they're working on more of the long-term, this is the short-term.
This assumes if there are any changes adopted by the commission tonight, that there will be a public hearing at our April meeting to present these changes and to hear the public on them before
That's
we
what I was
finally,
wondering about.
So-
before we finally adopt them.
Yes, so we are required to get this out to the users. The incentive plan, while we're not required to, we do want to get that out and advise the users of it.
Okay. How do you want to do this, Tom? You want to go through each one?
I can go through and explain it, or if you'd like to review and provide comment,
Have you all looked at them?
Yes.
I've reviewed it, and I'm willing to proceed to approve it if that's what Tom wants to do.
Have you, how about you, Ms. Topham?
I have also done the same. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gasparo?
I've looked at it, I do have a few comments. I mean, I'm very happy to
Go ahead.
see this
Go
come
ahead.
forward. The first is on the first page, the effective date. It would seem to me that if we publish this rates and charges sheet, I guess I was wondering, should we really have one item that doesn't become effective till a later date? In other words,
so, yeah, make them all
do you
effective
strike
March
the
15th,
5, 6,
right.
for the $250,
Do you have a problem with making it effective May 1st, 2000?
No,
Okay.
or
We just will have to get the
15th.
notice out right away,
Right.
that's all.
Yeah.
May 15th.
May 15th, I'm sorry.
May 15th,
right.
2015.
Okay.
I was wondering where you say itemized monthly reports required under freight. I like that. I'm wondering how we are going to,
Pounds per day?
Yes, we want it daily, so that if we want to do a spot audit, we can,
Which is what we've talked about before,
yeah.
to do that.
I would say daily. Then I would
Yeah,
say.
we will
That's
provide,
what-
we provide them with a report, we just put in there itemized, basically.
How about saying
But-
monthly report, comma, itemized daily, comma, required?
that's sort of what I was wondering, exactly what that meant. But that would, the chairman's language, I think, would clarify that.
Okay.
In other words, Tom, you've gone through this with Jacobs, and you're satisfied that it's what you want to do?
Yes, for the interim.
Right.
We are still working with them on the long-term, big rates and charges project.
I would like to suggest that on the ramp fee on page 2, that the increase be eliminated on the 6 to 9 to 10,000 pound plane, and that the rates on the larger 3 categories be increased by 10%. Instead of 5%. On the theory that they haven't been raised in a good long time, namely since 2009,
9?
and that this will, I mean, those 3 categories produce almost about $500,000 worth of revenue, and the other small ones produce very little revenue. And this will help, in a sense, offset the PFC for commercial passengers and help pay the debt service on
On the building that they
on
use.
on the building they use.
What do you think about that, Tom?
I think, given the fact they haven't been raised in a number of years, and that they do have a brand-new building of, which is a significant chunk of our debt service, I think it helps to balance some of that out, some of the costs of the airport.
Any reason why Jacobs didn't do this?
They again, they have to look at it from a different perspective, and they may be doing this. And my conversation with the young lady from, it's actually PB as their sub, I said, I hope I'm not jumping the gun. She said, no, that's fine. She said, I will just recalculate my numbers accordingly. So they may come in and say, okay, now this is your starting point. In 2 years, you want to do this to that fee or whatever. So it's more of a long-term program as opposed to the way we're doing it now, where it's, every couple of years we review it and make recommendations. They will have something that's driven by a mathematical model.
Okay.
Okay.
So if I may, just to recap what the fees would be then.
Yeah.
It would be 10, 50, 110, 330, and 550, correct?
Yes.
That's what you had in mind?
Yes.
I agree with that.
Okay, next comment,
Yeah.
Mr. Gasparo?
I think just under the land leases on page 3, whether or not some of this should be listed as fair market value or not, and what your thoughts might be.
I was incorrect in our previous discussion. The non-aeronautical, I believe, is the fair market value, and the way the aeronautical was established was it was 50% of the fair market value. In either case, I think, rather than referencing a specific number, we will just put in the reference to the fair market value.
50% of fair market value. Okay.
So your proposed revisions would be under land lease to
Under the
Aeronautical
aeronautical
would be-
fees.
under aeronautical land lease to
50%.
strike the minimum .44 and say 50% of fair
Minimum
market.
50%,
But
yes.
keep the word minimum, correct?
Right, yes.
And just so you're basically replacing 44 cents in the draft with 50% of fair market value.
Correct.
And then under non-aeronautical uses, you would change the
88,
to 80, the 88 to fair market value.
correct.
Okay. Do you want to explain the ramp access escort fee? I'm sure you don't, but.
No, as many of you know, our staff provides a number of escorts every year, especially in the summertime. And it's a combination of folks that are provided the service. Some are actually the owner of the airplane, own the vehicle. Some have their caretakers bring their vehicles out to them. Some of them have rental cars and either have somebody bring it to them or a company, or they go get the rental car and bring it out to the airplane. And some of it is provided by livery service companies. And we looked at it, and what was being, there were no fees for some, there were large fees for others, and some in the middle. So from an equitable standpoint, we just looked at this and estimated what the costs were. We looked at the amount of time it takes to provide the escort, the vehicle, the personnel, all those types of things, and felt that this was a reasonable fee to assess to anyone other than livery service that is provided an escort. The livery folks pay $300 per vehicle per season, and that more than covers the cost for our people to provide them an escort. So this is, again, just one of the cost recovery items that staff has identified that, it takes them time. They have to organize it. They've got to meet them at the gate. They escort them out. It ties up people and vehicles. So that was the logic behind the escort fee.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I've experienced that when I was a private pilot flying in somewhere, some kind of busy airport. They don't want you wandering around on the ramp getting hit by a propeller or whatever. I think that's a safety precaution, and I think if you can get paid for it, that's even better.
If I may, Tom, is $5 really?
That's what I was going to say. Is it enough?
And I don't want to soak it, but I just think about, you've said, and I know you've got some math you've based it on, but just from simply the fact that somebody's administering a fee in of itself.
Well, this is, in terms of the administration, goes right on to what's called our concierge screen.
Yeah.
It'll be added on as we have a number of supplemental type miscellaneous fees. We just put that in, they just hit it. We went through with staff the implementation process and, who's going to get assessed the fee and so on. It's going to be assessed to the aircraft operator, not to the group coming out, because we don't know who that's going to be.
So it gets assessed. In other words, when you're at an FBO and you're going to pay a bill, this is just on the bill, right?
Right. If a
The
car's
guy
coming
that's
to meet you-
wandering out with the car or something like that, he's not saying, give me $5.
Right.
It just goes on the bill at the end. I think that
We
makes
radio
sense.
it in, and it gets added to the charge, just like we do any other services.
Yeah,
we
that's
provide.
fine. It works fine.
The 5 does seem low.
Does to me.
But in all honesty, like I said, we broke it down by the amount of time it takes, and this is each escort, so arrival, departure, whatever. The time it takes to get over there, it's probably within 10 to 15 minute range. And it's, we're paying for that staff in other ways too. It was looked at too as somewhat of an introductory fee, because it is a brand new fee, so we're probably going to get feedback anyway. And we just thought this was reasonable.
I'm just
recover.
relating it to the cost of the steamship authority. Now putting your car on, it's taking the time. That's what they always said, taking their staff's time. And here you're saying it's going to take you 10, 15 minutes. Certainly their time is worth more than $5 for that.
Well,
But I
that's
know
why
you're
say
saying
the
introductory.
same customer is paying the ramp fee, is paying the landing fee, is paying fuel fees, you
Well,
know.
but I think Jeanette has a point. The customer on the ferry, a drive-on, drive-off, has already paid for his ferry ticket.
And I also, if I
Point
may,
well taken.
see
And
this
they're,
as-
and they're raising it, I think, $10
They raised it
this
to
year.
$50 now.
To
They
50?
doubled it.
Yeah, they doubled it. But it also seems that this is it's sort of a want, not a need. In other words, someone could opt out of this. This is really.
It is,
It's
but
a bonus, something that you could select, or you could still use the airport without doing this. My sense, I think $10. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mean to just cherry pick numbers, but $5 for anything that you're even calculating, and the fact that someone's taking a car out to an aircraft just seems like such a luxury, if you will.
I'm not
I
gonna-
don't want to couch it that way.
I don't want
No,
to say
it's-
that, but it's a.
This is a higher level of service that we're trying to provide.
Right.
And in some airports, you know, as Tony said, that you're escorted out there for nothing, but they're also not nearly as busy as we are in the summertime. So I can certainly see your viewpoint, and I wouldn't have any problem with, you
What
know,
if we made it a seasonal thing?
there's really.
Well, that gets.
Yeah,
You
then
got a lot of
picky,
one-off, you
yeah.
got a lot of one-off guys that comes in here, once at summer, and he doesn't
Yeah,
want to
but-
pay a seasonal fee.
Yeah, but it's not such a big deal, in February. In fact, they're glad to have something to do.
Yeah, they got nothing to do
My
in
concern
February.
with that, Dan, is just like we talked about all the other fees we tried to do seasonally, and FAA said we can't do that.
Yeah, they just
Fair
have.
point. Fair point.
And my point
throw
is you
$10
can't buy,
on the
you can't
table.
buy an ice cream on Nantucket for $5.
All right, that's
So
true, too.
$10.
Let's,
Is there consensus on the 10?
is there,
I think a 10, yes, sir.
Karen?
I'll go with 10.
And again, there's going to
What do
be
you
a
think it
public
should be?
hearing.
I think,
Yes.
I kind of like 5. It's an introductory fee. Next year, we'll have some feedback on it. You
Thing is-
may,
I'm sorry.
I don't think anybody's going to complain, whether it's 5 or 10. I
tell
think
you,
it's a
if you-
meaningless thing.
I shouldn't even say this. No, I won't
Don't.
say it. I'm thinking about the relative cost of the catering versus,
Well, the catering, well, I
it's
don't
like
want to say
Diet
anything about, the catering's a
Okay.
little steep.
Moving right on.
Yes,
let's do 10,
please.
please. We'll see what happens, see if anybody objects at the public hearing.
Should I try to summarize the parking lot changes?
Yes.
Essentially, what we're doing is, currently, there's no charge unless you're there overnight. We're going to an hourly fee structure similar to Hyannis. And to clarify, because it's not well-written here, from 0 to 2 hours, it will be free. From the second to the third hour, it will be $3
For the third hour.
for the third hour. And then from
For
4
any
to
additional hours, it'll be $1, up to 10.
up to a maximum of 10. And we have done an analysis on this. It was done about a year ago, but it should provide us additional income in the neighborhood of $35,000 to probably $45,000.
One question,
I
Tom?
think, by the way, I should put a caveat, I'm sorry, it's assuming the equipment can be programmed according to what we've been told it can be.
That was my question.
All right, down under the long-term parking at the FBO facility, are we agreeable to combining the first two into any airport employee?
It's the
With a
same
parking
language, so we
tank?
can just
Same
say
language, yeah.
airport employee parking.
And then, my suggestion would be that for other vehicles who park there overnight, they be charged the $20 fee. Because it's not an automated system, it has to be policed manually. We really don't want a lot of people parking there overnight, I don't think, do we?
I
No,
don't
I think
think
that makes a
so.
lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I would, if
Replace-
everybody's agreeable.
Overnight fee per day with $20 per night,
Right.
or per day, however. Sorry, but so
Overnight-
the overnight fee would be replaced with $20.
Overnight fee would be $20. Okay, anything else we want to talk about? I think the tenant discount for the meeting room, just be sure everybody's comfortable with that. And then all the rest is related to advertising, which I hope is a first step.
Yes, going back to your comment, though, Commissioner Gasparo, about the effective date, the reason we put the effective date on this is because we already have some contracts signed. So that may be why we...
What would happen, if I may, if you had someone that comes in between now and then, though,
Okay.
doesn't that continue
So-
the problem? Or you would do
We
a
have-
shorter
maybe-
term?
Do we have contracts signed for starting in October?
I don't know, but here's a thought. Maybe we put it, everything's effective on the 15th, unless a prior, agreement or something like that.
That would
Just
seem,
So like you say, if somebody comes in now,
they
this
pay
is
the new
effective.
fee, but,
Right.
I mean, it seems like to me, if you've already got a signed contract under an existing fee, it's
But you're not
signed.
going to have any new one. If you filled up the space for the summer, you're not going to have any new ones. How about making it October 1st?
Why?
for the-
I think it's better for consistency to do the 15th, and as Arthur, I think, was about to say, you already have an agreement.
Yeah, I mean, you just strike
Supersedes
it.
this. So we can just put a footnote, any agreement supersedes or whatever.
I think if you have a contract right now, it was set up under the existing one,
You're covered under that.
and you're.
I understand that, but my point is there's no space available for the summer. Is that not correct, Janine?
That is correct, right, May? We're pretty much full for the summer. Let me display you records.
Well, why not charge the new, okay, charge the new.
So in other words, you would just strike the effective date here too, and then it goes back to the rates and charges has one date at the top. It says May 15th, and
The other part of that is we eliminated one season, so we may have an agreement for season 1, but not season 2. So it's not, we don't necessarily have the expanded season available now either.
Okay.
Well, it's not available.
so that would be my proposal, that you would simply strike the effective 6/1.
Is everybody agreeable?
I agree, because I didn't understand why we...
Is that easy to facilitate, Tom?
I'm going to look to the boss.
In other words, if we sign a bunch of contracts, you can't change the terms of the contracts.
No, those are in effect under the
We can
current
try.
rate.
Right.
Let's not.
No, right, I don't want to do someone wrong. That's under what it is, but if you come in new,
That's a constitutional law issue. All right, so they'll all be effective May 15th, with a small asterisk, subject to previously signed agreements. I think we should take a vote on the entire package to see if we approve presenting it at a public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a
I'll second it.
All those, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rafter, and your
Yes.
Thank the staff.
colleagues for...
A lot of
Yeah.
input from staff on this, trust me.
All right, we are next up to ATM articles.
And we have, can you drive that? Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, when we get to the land ones. There's a lot of articles that pertain to the airport here. Some are pretty much, do you want to go through this, Dan, or you want me to, or?
No, go ahead.
Some are fairly standard. Article 2 is unpaid bills, and I have to note, it's 1,253 when I got here. I think we had a
600 and some
600,
thousand.
yeah, it was like 600 and some thousand, so kudos to our finance department. Article
Well,
13.
there was one big one in there for fuel.
Yeah.
That was
Article,
partly because we lost control of what we were spending, so, we in the town.
Article 13 is our operating budget, appropriation for that. Article 14 is the capital expenditures, and we have listed there, if you'd like, I can go through them, high-speed snow
No, I
plow
don't think you
blower.
need to. We've been
It's all in there.
Who's going to pay $3.7 million? The town's going to pay us to buy that equipment next
No,
year?
they are appropriating that so that we can spend it. Some of this will go to bonds, and we'll also get grants to repay some of the
Yeah,
bonds.
we went through all that when we discussed these capital items, but
It has,
we have to have authorization to spend the money,
Okay.
and that's what this is.
What's going to be the reception for this type of a
Well,
number with,
if I may,
it's already, they're all aware of it, the FinCom and
there
the
is
selectmen?
Dan, I'll be glad to do this if you don't, there's
Go
a
ahead.
fairly lengthy process that we have to go through. We have to present to the Capital Planning Committee and to the FinCom these budgets. And they sit down and they'll have a meeting with me, and I have to explain every project, its funding, financing, all that. So that's already done prior to this. This is the appropriation part.
Good, so everybody's aware of this.
Everybody's
This is
fully
not
aware.
some-
No,
Yep.
no
Okay.
surprises.
Good.
Well, actually, there is one number that surprised me, which is the 928,025. Where did we come up with that, finally?
That was left over from I'm sorry.
That's the supplemental
It
funding for the...
was a supplemental. It was a combination of some additional reappropriation, I think, but also this is what the finance director met several times with bond counsel on and came up with in terms of what they thought was doable, if you will. So there was a portion, if you remember, there was some that was not appropriated in the original, and I forget the exact numbers, but it was like $4 million that was appropriated, and the actual OTA was $4.2 million or something. And then there was the additional supplemental that we had talked about, should the bids come in high. And we put together, Janine and/or Jamie put together what that possibly might mean. This is where it went back and forth with Brian Turbot, the finance director, and bond counsel, and our staff, and this is the number that they came up with.
Okay, at the town meeting, if we have outraged citizens of saying, why do we have to spend $3.7 million? Who's going to get up and defend this laundry list of stuff? Is the FinCom going to do it? Is the selectman going to do it? Or is somebody here going to do it?
I think we're gonna do
Or
it.
is Tom going to do it? Or is Dan going to do
I
it?
think we're going
I
to
can
do
do
it.
it.
Okay,
gonna
good.
do
As
it.
long as we're prepared for
Right.
that. That's
Oh,
all
yeah.
I'm saying.
We will have to be prepared for it. Just to back on the control tower for a minute, there were two purposes here. One was to provide some cushion if the bids came, even on the scaled-down version of the tower, it came in higher than we expected and hoped. And also, there was no provision made for the owner's project manager, which is a requirement for any construction project, essentially, which one would have hoped we could have gotten out of because of the FAA involvement, but it doesn't work that way.
I recall that discussion.
Okay. All right, keep going, Tom, then.
Next, Article 15 is a transfer of $50,000 from operating to salary and wages. That's to cover some of the overtime associated, or hopefully all of it, with the snowstorms. But you may remember there's only two ways that we can do that. One is at town meeting. The next is at the end of the year with FinCom and Board of Selectmen approval. Jamie feels as though the $50,000 should cover us, but if in fact we need more, because she came up with this number probably 2 snowstorms ago. If we need more, we'll do that at the end of the year. Article 17 is the authorization for the Airport Aviation Fuel Revolving Fund. We had requested that the town initially wanted to increase it to the 5.5, which basically we were allowed to go up to, but we asked that it be kept at the 5.3, which is the existing level, so that we don't have such a negative impact because of the low cost of fuel right now. So
I agitated for it to be even lower, but apparently lost that battle.
the
Now
Article
there's a small victory, Dan.
Article 18 is the carbon neutral program. There, you may recall, town council advised us to leave this in as a placeholder. The council has put together a motion that essentially it says that it gives us the ability to do the solar project for the terms and things. However, FinCom wanted language in there that before any expenses put out of town or airport money, that it go before FinCom and Board of Selectmen again. So it's primarily around the solar. Initially, it was to be able to use tax-exempt bonding for the entire project, but as I mentioned before, when we entered into this, we never anticipated that. We always anticipated third-party funding. So there is some concern from Honeywell on this, and I believe they want to address the commission, so just a heads up on that. But the FinCom was adamant about not spending any money until, I can understand their point. They don't want to get into where we were. Article 27 is for the collective bargaining agreement with the union. Article 58.
Does everybody understand that? That's to pay this year's cost of the first year's wage increases under
Yes, agreed.
the contract. Okay.
Right, that's the amount that was quantified there. Article 58 is the zoning, which I attended the planning board meeting last night. We're requesting some zoning changes on, it's listed as Sun Island Road. It's actually a piece that wraps all the way around into the Nobodier Farm. This is essentially what was in the current version, but it will be refined. I met with Andrew Vorse, the planning director, and yeah, Dan, I don't know if you can.
This is Sun Island Road, is it not?
Yes. No, up.
This one.
Right up there, I think. Yeah.
This one's Sun Island.
Yes, because that first rectangle where your
correct.
finger is.
Right.
That's zone commercial industrial. Currently, it's about 5 acres. We want to leave that.
Okay.
To the
These
top,
two parcels.
yeah, top left, we want to change to R5, and then I think it was CN. Excuse me. And again, looking at if the FAA were to allow us to build any employee housing, that would be the location for it. The square rectangle to the right was essentially to cover what's in the master plan as the some T hangars or whatever that were out in that area, large hangars rather. So we needed a zoning change for that too. The zoning board, or the planning board rather, last night made a motion to have a favorable recommendation at town meeting for this. There was some concern expressed by the land council, and we're going to be meeting with them on exactly what our intentions are.
What are the little blue squiggly things, please?
Those are the areas proposed to be rezoned.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Not all of them
Oh,
are doing.
It's not, and it's not as, the rectangle at the top left is not nearly as big as what they're showing.
okay.
Essentially, it would be taken across from the Delta fields. And when I sat with Andrew, I explained what we wanted to do. He's going to have his mapping people lay that out and map it specifically. So
This all comports with the airport layout plan.
this is part of the master plan process, and that's why we're requesting it.
Good.
Any other questions on that one? Article 84 is the home rule petition for the revolving fund to remove us from the overall cap so that we can set the amount as needed. It's continuing, happens every year. Article 100 is a long-term lease authorization for the airport gas. When we put that back out, we want to be able to give a long-term lease to whoever's going to be leasing the gas station so they can amortize their costs associated with it.
Does that also include Harbor Field property?
That is
The
the-
buildings?
that
It
is
is.
the-
It is, okay. I thought it was, but I wanted to be sure.
Article 102, it doesn't cover the airport in its entirety, but there are two sections that do, and that is the Old South Road section and the Hinsdale Road. Tony, back to your point on the ALP, these are two areas that cross the
Two
airport.
paper roads across.
Okay.
the airport.
It needs to go up one more May, please.
Yeah, and you'll see, there's two companion articles here, which it's interesting because the maps look totally different. So the runway is up to the top left there, just above that title box. And the two red lines, the top one is Hinsdale and the bottom one is Old South Road. On the map, they cut right across the airport property, right across the approach to runway 24. So to clean it up, and again, as part of the master plan, it was identified, to clean the maps up, we're asking that they be removed. In order to do that, Article 102 is necessary, and then Article 107, 102 takes it, 107 gives the Board of Selectmen the ability to sell, convey, transfer, and meeting with the chairman this morning, very astute, picked up that should probably be more specific to transfer to the Airport Commission to avoid or alleviate any issues that were similar to what we're having in another area. So I wrote to the town council today and asked how that can be done. So
They're all agreeable to that?
I don't know if they're agreeable to it, but
I wouldn't be surprised if there's some pushback there.
well, I'm hoping that the town council can.
Well, I mean, we'll see, and, we don't have another meeting before town meeting, do we?
No.
No. So it's thought that at some point, somebody's going to build a road there? Or they will not build a road there?
It would be a little bit like the Gatto property.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, it's a little bit like they're asking us to move the fence down at the other end.
Well, we don't want to do that.
And, no, and I guess if we get pushback, what we would have to do is amend this on the town meeting floor.
That's why in my
I think,
email it was, what's the mechanism to do this?
so I think maybe we ought to get authorization to do that now, if it's necessary.
So the proposed language would read, just to be, so that we're clear, or to work it out, would be to strike, this is in Article 107, after Board of Selectmen to sell, convey, or otherwise dispose, we would replace that with to
Convey to the control.
convey care, custody, and control to the Airport Commission. Does that sound correct?
Something of that sort, yeah.
Right.
With,
Yeah.
You have to run that by a lawyer, do you think, to make sure it's
Yeah.
worded properly?
Well, we would have to, the amendment would have to be
Right,
worded, but
yes.
the concept is one of our having the authority to do that.
that would be my I guess, do you want to have a
I think we
vote
should
on
have.
this?
we
I-
should-
How did this come up in the first, how did this come up in the first place? In other words, who wants to,
Well, it's,
This is somewhat standard. I've seen it in a number of articles where they'll take it and then they'll do this type of language for transfer. But again, it's also how I think we got into a little bit of a pickle with some of the other stuff, that it wasn't specific to transfer to the Airport Commission.
I'm just trying to think through, I know you've asked town council for advice on how to do this, but
Well-
just thinking of our own experience.
I've asked him for advice, as well as if he can issue an opinion to the Board of Selectmen that would identify why it should be done.
And I mean,
He's familiar with, I believe he's familiar with the other situation, circumstances, and to alleviate some of that, I would hope that he would opine that this would be the way to do
I
it.
think the warrant has to go to the printer
no,
fairly
we
soon.
have to be amended on the town meeting floor.
Well, unless
There-
somehow.
I believe tomorrow night at Board of Selectmen, there is one,
Last
their
draft.
motions are going to be
That's right.
discussed tomorrow night.
Did you send a note to town council?
Yes, yes.
All right, well, then maybe you should call the article tomorrow night.
Well, that's what I was
I mean,
thinking
there are
of.
obviously there are other parcels of land involved with this that don't affect the airport, right?
I don't know in 107 if that's the case or not.
Oh, I have the
07.
whole thing.
who owns this property? In other words, who's the owner of this property right now? Do we know?
Well, I think it would be
I
considered
suspect
us.
this may be one of these places where they're going to take it from us by eminent domain and then,
Yeah.
And then what do they do with
If
it?
you were to, again, just playing lawyer here and not being one, that the way you would look at that would be that it's a private way, and since we already
the
own,
butter's way.
right, and since we already own the the property to each side under the derelict fee statute, that we still would already own it to the center line of each, so this maybe isn't necessary. I mean, really, I think what it does is to clean up mapping, if you will, to
Yeah,
some
that's
extent.
what the intent, I think,
But
is through the whole thing.
I don't know, the whole program, really,
The Airport Commission should have a position on this, that's all I'm saying.
I don't think we have a problem, I don't have a problem with Article 102.
no.
It's the 107 and
It's
just
the
changing the
107,
language,
which is-
as you mentioned.
102 has got a lot of
Pieces.
So
pieces, yeah.
my motion, if I may, just so that we have it out there, would be to, I guess,
Amend Article 107.
right, to seek an amendment to Article 107 to strike sell, convey, or otherwise dispose, and replace it with convey care, custody, and control to the Airport Commission, or other similar language as suggested by council.
May I ask one
Yeah.
question? Jeanette, I see you have the entire thing. In 107, are there other pieces in there?
No, there are not,
Okay,
to the best of my
that
knowledge.
makes sense. I didn't want to...
Right, I think that
It's just,
I'm assuming, or whoever put this together was very good about noting the articles not in their entirety.
May's the land person.
and you've looked at 102, because I also see Hinsdale there. Is that anything to do with us or not?
Hinsdale is the same thing. Hinsdale is the
Okay.
top red line.
But
there.
that's with many pieces of property, and those articles.
On 102, yes.
Right, 102 and 101.
And as I think the chairman said, there's no issue with 102, it's the language in 107 that we want.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will bring that up at the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night as well.
I guess we need a second to my motion?
Yes,
there a
I'll
I'll make a
second.
second to that motion,
All
yes.
right, we'll all second it. Is there further comment?
No, no further comment.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Article 108 is a citizen warrant article, I believe, creation of a public right-of-way on Everett Street. May has the map up here, and to get you situated, the Thompson House is located right here. This is Sandy Roberts' property, formerly Divine. And this is, again, where they were talking about they want us to move our fence, which is in this area. So this is a citizen warrant article, provide beach access through this. This is Everett Street over here. Correct? Mike?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Well, I think we obviously object to both those articles.
I'm not sure what Article 109 says, actually.
Well, you've got it
Well,
right
I'm
here.
still-
No, I'm reading it. I'm
Oh,
just
oh, I
not
see what
sure.
you're saying.
It's not,
109, and that's why I had the map up here. It's whatever it's saying, it's referring to that parcel of land that is in front of or between the Thompson House and the ocean.
It's more than an acre of property, and they're looking to condemn it and provide a public way over it, and I think that would...
that's Article 108.
Yeah.
Article 109,
I believe it was to create a parking and access.
Yeah, it's more than an acre of property, and turn it into turn it to the Nantucket Land Bank for use as open space, conservation, et cetera. That would encumber the property and prevent its use, sale by the airport
But
forever.
this may be a moot point because if, in fact, the land bank already owns the property.
Well, we don't even know.
We don't know yet.
that's all the more reason to oppose it.
Right.
Yeah, I think we ought to just have a position on it, that's all.
Yeah, I think we should, too.
On both 108 and 109?
Yeah.
Yeah, and say no.
As premature.
Certainly 108 is problematic, and 109 is premature.
But I think the commission should have a bias either for or against. I'm not suggesting we vote.
If I may, too, though, when these first came out, there was some discussion, and then as the warrant articles continued to be read, there was it was almost as though, and I don't want to speak for the proponent here, but it's almost as though it was, I can't pull it because we already put it, and nobody can pull a citizen warrant article.
Right.
But I think he came up with some other solution, or I don't know, but it
Well,
got very quiet. I'll leave it at
Well, if it passes, what do we do?
no, but it,
No, you had to discuss
well,
it
I
beforehand.
think we don't know what the planning board did on this.
I don't know.
So I would hope that they said no, but we don't know that. So if we want to take a position, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that the Airport Commission recommends that everybody vote no on 108 and 109.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, question, what do we do with that?
We'll figure it out. We'll find out what the plan is.
Yeah, you need more information.
If the
Yeah,
planning
yeah.
board has taken a position, or the Board of Selectmen, it makes a big difference as to what kind of position we develop or...
Should I inform the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night of this?
I would see how the wind's blowing
Okay.
and use your judgment. I wouldn't necessarily...
As I said, I have not heard any discussion on these two.
Yeah, certainly if you're asked, you can tell them, but I think it's up to you to decide whether it's the,
Okay.
Yeah, if they're...
there's a chance that it will create a bit of our position will create a bit of a will create some pushback on the Board of Selectmen.
I don't have any trouble with that at all. I mean, we're an independent
I only
operation.
have trouble, I agree with you, but I only have trouble with it in terms of the public relations piece of it.
True, but I think it'd be nice to have a policy at the Airport Commission about how we deal with this type of property issue. I mean, we've had long discussions about the value of these properties to us, if in fact we own anything there, and the negative impact of having them declared public parks right next to the runway is problematic. At least we think it is.
Yeah.
Jeanette, in that copy that you
agree.
have of the warrant, are there any FinCom or any?
No recommendations,
No
no,
recommendations.
no, and I was going to ask you, when do we find out about the planning board? I know that I was at a hospital meeting today, and they
anything-
felt they
No,
got
they're
a...
not in the packet even for tomorrow
Did
night's
you look
selectmen.
and see if they'd amended it today?
Oh, no, unless they amended it today.
Well, they felt that whatever their articles were, they got a favorable approval, so I was wondering if we
I mean,
knew.
I watched the meeting last night. It went till 20 past
After-
11.
yeah.
And, it's just so hard to follow, honestly. And some of the stuff had been subject of previous meetings, so it's just like kind of which ones get pushed forward. And I don't think there was discussion last night on 108 and 109.
It's very challenging to do this at the last minute, if you will.
Well, the town meeting starts at 6 o'clock at night on a Monday night, and, this is obviously going to go to midnight for anybody that can stay awake.
Are we going to run
No.
into a conflict with that, with our
They usually stop
Our
it.
meeting?
meeting?
Ours is next week, I think.
No, ours is the following week.
Right. Oh, shoot, that's right.
But yeah, I
We
think
can
we'll
always
be
have a
there
special
Tuesday,
meeting.
too.
Yeah, no, I've got
Say
to
again?
figure out my...
I think we'll be there Tuesday night as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Wednesday.
So they'll just
These
run
aren't
it.
going to come up right away.
No.
Well, and if they even come up, if
They
they're,
might go in the hopper, right?
you know,
If they don't get called.
I will say what's the lady that runs the show at the?
Sarah Alger.
Moderator,
The
Sarah.
moderator. She does a very good job
Yeah,
at
she's excellent.
keeping that thing moving and cleaning it up, so.
We need to get her to stop people just for 3 minutes like she was doing one year. And she didn't do it quite so well last year, I don't believe.
She didn't have
James.
James there ringing his bell.
Clock, yeah. The other articles were just attached for your information. Some of them, they're not directly related to the airport, but they could have some impact possibly in the future and some bylaw changes, that type of thing, so. Anything else on the
No.
articles?
So we have
No.
we've taken two positions on the articles. One on Article 107 and one on Articles 108 and 109. Okay, good. Let's move on then to, thank you for that review, Mr. Rafter. Atlantic Aeolus lease amendment request.
This goes back quite a way, but we finally have a request for a sublease, and it's basically a cleanup issue that we tried to get accomplished, so we'd like to get approval for that. And Atlantic Aeolus would also like to lease an additional 15,082 square feet of property. And I believe Janine spoke with the appropriate legal, state people, whatever, and this is allowable as long as the tenant pays for any and all changes associated with it, like surveying and anything else. So,
And that would be at the same rate they currently pay?
yes, which is CPI too. So,
Maureen, go.
Do you need
yep.
a motion for that, or it's,
I believe yes.
I'll make a motion to that.
Is there a
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, that's both items, right? The master plan, review and possible approval of the ALP.
Let me, if I can, just update you on the master plan, then we can get into the ALP if you don't mind. But we, Jamie forwarded the updated financials to the consultant. They are in the process of updating the model that will be created for us for our rates and charges. She also sent us some sample documents to review in terms of format for the deliverables that we will receive. We're then going to be setting up a conference call to go over the updated model once she sends it to us, and then we will have a sit-down, face-to-face meeting on site and go through the details of both products, which would be the financial feasibility portion of the master plan and the white paper for the rates and charges. So that's the financial aspect. The other is the airport layout plan that I think we gave out at the last meeting. If there's any comments or questions, I'd like to be able to release this and have the consultant.
See, they did update the map. The
Base map?
base map, yeah.
Yeah.
They did?
Yep.
Oh,
On the-
what, on the big
large
one?
yeah.
The little one, I didn't. Third draft, oh, okay, wait a second. I didn't realize that there was a difference between no, this base map is still
Well, it shows,
way out of date.
shows all this stuff.
Shows those, it doesn't show these, doesn't show any, this isn't up to even 2000.
Oh, sure, that wasn't built, this was all built after 2000.
But they're missing all, something's not right here still, so that, you know, we could circle
Okay.
back on that. They're missing all these structures are all developed, this is all developed, this is all developed. Something's still not right there.
Yeah, but for example, this,
Yeah, no, you're right, it's a hybrid, it's like they got some of it, but not all of it.
I think that's the Strong Wings building with a house behind it.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway,
But for example, like the inside circle of Teasdale, all four of those lots, those are all been developed since 2001. You know, it's 13 years.
Let me find out from Heath what he has there, where he got it, and
So it just seems, again. And then my comment was back to what were we going to, you know, we were showing proposed airport manager's house. Did we have some,
we were going to leave that and meet with the FAA and ask for their guidance on that, how they think we should show it.
so shouldn't we have, you know, before we adopt, I want to adopt the final real deal, if I may. You know, in other words, that's not where we're going to put something.
Well, I guess what we could do is adopt this as draft, subject to FAA comments.
As I see this as a process, this is not a, this is the best we've got at this point, and I think it's going to be changed, amended, but I think from a process point of view, Tom, don't we want to present this for signature to the FAA and the state at some point?
Well, yes, but I think Arthur's point, too, is we discussed moving that location over. That's why we're going for these zoning changes.
Right.
Okay.
So that needs to be addressed. And yes, I think, you know,
In other words, you're
You're
working
right.
with, you're working with Jacobs to try to get this
But
ALP signed off, and of course, there'll be changes to it. This is a working document. It's not as if this
So-
freezes it for all time, does it?
So, if I may, we'll take comments that you have, such as this, and feed it to Jacobs, but I would like to at least have the ability to move forward with a sit-down with the FAA and state.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
And
Yeah,
then
I think we want to
once-
move this along.
Before we submit for final approval, bring back to the commission based on the comments from those agencies, and then get the commission's approval, and then submit for final approval to FAA. Does that sound like a
Yes.
process?
Yeah, I support that.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that we have sort of a final vote on a final one before it becomes the one that gets the signatures on it. And that's exactly what we're
Right.
proposing, so that meets, sort of my concern on that. My comments were, I think, I still would like to see the base map as much as possible reflect true and accurate conditions on the ground. I still am not I don't think we're going to change anything now, but I'm not entirely comfortable with the level of expansion of the south apron, even in phases. I think that we're sort of throwing aside a lot of the work and time we had spent, comments received with the Surfside area plan. It's sort of, now we're still showing hangars back there. We really haven't had any discussion.
I had asked that question, and the only reason they were shown is for somewhat noise mitigation.
Yeah, which again gets back to me. It's like
Yeah.
they're just throwing something on there as opposed to actual planning of how you and what you might do back there. It's like all they really care about is that you get the ramp. And it's like, well, whatever else you maybe do or don't do back there, which isn't going to be to build hangars.
I wouldn't.
So I don't know why we would show that on an ALP. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just don't like the sort of.
I'm not convinced of the need for those ramps, but
Yeah.
I think if we don't put them on there, we won't get anything. If we
Well, I think
decide we need
that's
them.
the point. In other words,
Yeah.
this is a document that's, it's a wish list, and if it's not on there, I think that may create approval problems, money problems out of the FAA. I think we want to play ball with the FAA and this ALP, and Jacobs is teaching us how to do that. At least that's my understanding of this. And the way it's set up now, we're on the road to do those things. Not that we're committed to do any of them. But if it's not on there, we
They would
may...
all have to come back to the commission for approval.
Right.
It's just like any other project that we do. And there can be amendments made, as I mentioned earlier, through a pen and ink change. But it's kind of like you show the big one and then modify accordingly.
Just my observation from sort of past practice with Jacobs especially, is once it's on the plan, it gets pushed forward and says, this is what we have to do, this is why we're doing this project, because it's on this, it's like, the mentality of previous investment almost. It's like, well, you've already,
Well,
I'm not saying to strike anything quite yet, on this stuff. I understand. I just think that this one piece is something that we've had, and again, that whole apron is sitting out there empty. We need all of this. And I know
Come
though
back to you
July
in
and
July.
August, I know. I guess the only piece left that I still think that hasn't been, considering the impacts that we heard about from the meetings that we had, that we could certainly anticipate, that they haven't really looked at true possible mitigation measures.
I think that's true. I don't disagree with that.
That it's only to just throw these hangers on there. Is that, what about, I thought they were going to look at things for whether it was sound barrier walls, whether it was...
They did do some level of that, and they, because I remember they looked at the different types and styles and
Right.
architecturally pleasing. They
Yeah,
also found
but
that
is
none
that
of them
relevant
were
to this
eligible.
discussion right now? In the sense that the issue is whether we're going to put the ramp expansion on the ALP. It's how we do it and how we go about it is a subject of a whole nother conversation.
Well, I guess, I agree, and I'm not saying to strike, but I guess seeing hangars on there in that area is somewhat of, a, concern. I hadn't honestly, I don't know if that was from another, but that's not something that we've discussed
No, we haven't.
At all.
That's true.
I agree, and I had a question on that myself.
And if we were going to look at, I think we just need to take a little more time looking at that portion of the project before we adopt this, and we should have Jacobs go back and revisit. If you're going to have some sort of possible mitigating
Mechanism.
feature, right, in that area, then it would best be, if it could be determined
That's by
now.
a note.
Yeah, or
the plan.
something,
How about we
something,
put a note on the plan,
area for
subject to
mitigation.
full review of noise mitigation?
and
What's,
not-
what's the downside of not approving this tonight, Tom?
Just a time.
We get a
issue.
delay.
Yeah.
And is there any pressure from the FAA for us to give them
No,
an
I think
ALP?
that's driven by the commission. We're still working on other aspects. If everything else was wrapped up, I'd say there might be a concern, but I don't think that that's critical, honestly. I don't know of any.
I would, may I make
Rather
a
do it right.
suggestion? That we ask Jacobs to take the hangars off the plan, to put, because I don't see demand for hangars coming along anytime soon anyway.
Not in that area.
And that we put a note on here. It says already subject to environmental review and permits, but we could add to that and noise mitigation something.
Why don't they come back to us with
With a
some,
recommendation.
or why, we've been through this once, and it was sort of, okay, we'll get back to it when we get to this layout plan. I think it's something that's worth focusing on a little bit. I don't know that we have to, again, I agree, determine the exact solution at this point, but we're adopting a plan that does take on some life, and I agree that it can be modified in the future, but that as a result of showing this level of expansion in an area that's going to be of concern to a large neighborhood that we've heard from, I think it would be incumbent on us to look at, as part of the layout plan, what could we put in? That's what Jacobs did. That's why they threw the hangars on there. They just don't have a.
Well, I have a what I think is a more serious question about this than even the noise mitigation, which is, they show a lot of little planes down at that end of the runway, and that end of the ramp rather, except the first phase.
Right, everyone gets pushed.
Beyond the first phase, in phases B, C, and D, they're all little planes.
Right.
And my question is that really going to mitigate the problem that we have on those 3 weekends?
I don't know that that's part of it. I think that's a functional issue. If you were to do it the opposite way around, then you require a taxi lane that is much greater to go the full length. That's typical in any apron planning aspect.
Yeah, but the fundamental question is this going to solve the problem?
Solve.
The problem of overcrowding on the ramp and the safety issues that occur there, admittedly to some extent now. But is it going to solve the problem of those Sunday afternoons in July and August?
If we had that today, I guarantee it'll solve the problem. But I can't guarantee that more airplanes won't come either. That's,
Okay.
In other words, my understanding of the ALP is this is a working document. What's on it now need not ever be built.
That's right.
It just gives us the option of building it. And if we don't put it on now, we may preclude that option. That's my only concern.
I think the second part of your statement is absolutely correct, is my understanding. The first part of it, I would take issue with in the sense that in the past at least, there has been, it's sort of taken on a life of its own with respect to, for example, the tower. I don't know whether that was on the last ALP or not. I think it was
Over in the bunker area.
In the bunker area. And, there was a lot of
Well, I remember some scuttlebutt on how difficult that was, getting that
Like
scotched.
Arthur summed it up very well, that, there was a philosophy that, well, it's on the map, we have to build it.
Yeah.
And let's keep spending money. And consulting firms will do that if you allow them, because that's how they make their
It
business.
also occurs to me that if we spend, another year telling Jacobs to redo the redo, that just gets more.
I would just take
Expense.
the hangers off and go.
I mean, I think we're close. I just think we're
Yeah.
close. I just think our duty is to really
Well,
get this.
what I would like to do is, given the comments tonight, from the base map to the manager's house to the hangars, have those changes made, maybe proceed forward with either another week or whatever you think you want for comments, or allow us to at least set up the meeting with the FAA
Yeah.
and invite a commissioner, however many we're allowed to have, in that meeting, and then hear what they have to say, come back.
Could
Let
they,
Jacobs do that.
could they put something here, and would you be happy with it, Mr. Gasparo, if they put some kind of line along the west boundary of that ramp and said noise mitigation efforts?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I'm getting at, is that you just haven't, we haven't just left aside what we heard from that neighborhood, and it's not where I live, it's not a point of that, it's thinking about, that
No, I
constituency
understand your
where
point.
You're
I
right.
think-
we heard from,
It's something we heard from that wasn't addressed.
Yeah.
Yet
That's
we're not addressing it.
Right.
so yes, that would, and I agree with, Tom's approach. We just,
So we're agreeable to adding just a note, or are we going to erase the hangers?
oh yeah, raise the hanger.
Erase the hangers, and I would put in some
Identify
kind of,
what the mitigation effort will be.
well,
Or
you don't
just
even
that
have,
there would be, right?
that there would be.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at as
Right.
well, that you haven't, that, associated with any kind of an expansion like this, there needs to be, it's been contemplated by the commission that there would be a need
I think that's a
for,
very valid point.
some sort of substantial mitigation effort, not a row of little cypress trees. I mean, something that's,
They blow over.
oh, no, I'm still cutting them up.
Okay. All right, so I will proceed.
All right, why don't you go ahead and get those done, and try to schedule the meeting with the FAA. Probably you won't get it anyway until middle of April, right? So go ahead and schedule it.
And we can look at the next plan the next time, too. It's just
That's right.
keep working on it.
Get Jacobs to make those changes that we've talked about tonight, submit them to the FAA as a draft,
Right.
and
Circle back.
circle back.
Work in progress.
Everybody
Thank you.
All right.
agreeable with that?
Agreed.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
I think it was that was a worthwhile discussion.
thank you.
Anything on the GA building?
No, not yet. We're still working on that.
All right. Manager's report.
Let's see. The control tower is being rebid March 25th, with sub-bidders due on April 15th, and the GCs due on April 29th.
The plan on the tower, I guess, is to do it next year. We're not going to try to jam it
will
down
be- No, it'll be done in the fall.
before the summer, yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
in the fall. The security project, the ramp light, I'm being told, will be completed in April. We've been waiting quite a while for that. We had a number of issues with the interactive employee training. Bob Tallman and I met with the consultant. We were provided what they believe was going to be the deliverable, and I had a number of questions, and I told them I want those answered before we approve anything else, so we're awaiting answers on that. The ramp reconstruction, there is a meeting, as I mentioned earlier, it's scheduled for March 25th to review the preliminary design. The website, NOAA has been doing a lot of work with Jason Bridges from town, and their goal is to go live on April 1st with our new website, so that'd be a tremendous improvement. Our parking lot, some of you may have observed that the one of the exit lane machines was damaged significantly in one of the storm events. Looks like somebody ran it over, and it has the brains for all that operation out there. So we did receive pricing from Scheidt & Bachman, but we have to confirm some items on it. We're looking at whether or not we're going to switch over from a token system to a ticket system, what our long-term plan is going to be, and what our interim plan is going to be. The pricing that we received from Scheidt & Bachman was about $145,000 to replace some of the equipment and upgrade the software. So fairly expensive, and that's why I say we want to come up with an interim plan and a long-term plan, because it's going to have to become a capital item. So
Is there any insurance recovery from a damage like that, or?
if we could figure out who did it, yes. Our camera was inoperative. There was a police report filed, but nobody reported who hit it.
So somebody was going around plowing snow and banged into it?
Well, it actually looks like a car may have been trying to exit and fishtailed out and hit it. You know, either that or backed up into it. So
Got to work hard to do that, going that slowly.
the good news is it looks bad, but everything inside's operating. Our geothermal recommissioning, we're working with National Grid on that, and we're also internally working to transfer the project from NOAA into the maintenance side of the house so that they have an understanding of what the actual project will entail and physically how to maintain it in the future. Also, Janine has been very busy on reviewing various phone system options for a voice over IP, cloud-based, and again, doing a lot of due diligence, talking with the different people who have different systems, and I can't wait for that to be finalized because we desperately need it. Let me see what else we have here. We discussed some of the advertising and rates and charges, but I also want to let you know that I'm working on a request for proposal for advertising to have a firm possibly come in and sell the advertising and control the whole program. So once I have a draft of that, I will present it to the commission, but that's probably another month off. On the operations side of the house, just a heads up, Retrix is having a job fair for the JetBlue handling personnel tomorrow from 10 to 4, and then again on March 25th. We discussed the wine festival. I was going to bring that up. Just a reminder, there's a Chamber of Commerce business after hours at the FBO May 7th from 5:30 to 7:30, and Cape Air is partnering with us on that event. And one note, I will be off island Saturday through Monday, and then I return to Boston for a seminar on Tuesday, and then be back on island hopefully Tuesday evening. I may have to stay for a meeting on Wednesday. The state was talking about setting up a meeting, actually Honeywell, with the new Undersecretary for Environment to go over the carbon neutral, but I expressed my concern to Chris Willenborg from the state that I didn't want to expend any of their political capital if in fact this may, be a moot point. So I'm not sure that meeting's going to take place or not. We do have attached a hiring report. There's no changes, but I would like to mention that the compensation classification analysis is completed. Mr. Jacobs is going to be sending me a draft presentation, and I'd like to have him come and present to the commission at the next meeting, give a brief update as to what the findings are. I don't think there's any surprises. It shows where our employees are, what the benchmarks are, and establishes some potential ranges for us for future hires and that type of thing. So he looked at both union and non-union personnel. So I will schedule that with the chairman's approval for the next meeting.
It'll be a long meeting again.
Well, we're going to tell them to hold it.
Yeah, but we have the hearing.
The public hearing, for the rates and charges. That will be a long one in itself, right? Okay. Would you like me to put that back another month? It's not critical. There's nothing that's...
Why don't we?
Okay. We'll do that. That's my report.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
None.
Subcommittee reports?
Do we have an environmental committee next Wednesday?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
At 1.
It's tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday, okay. Tomorrow at 1? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Are there any commissioners' comments? The only thing I would say is I just looked through the warrant, and probably in violation of the rules against using electronic gadgets at the table, but for Articles 107, the motion is a Finance Committee motion, not a Planning Board motion, to allow the sale, to approve the language, basically, of the article.
It's a finance.
That's what it says,
Probably because it involves
money.
money.
And then on Article 108 and 109, it has room for a Finance Committee motion, but it doesn't say what it is. So that may come up tomorrow night. All right, is there public comment at this time? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, to review the enumerated executive session minutes, and to, under Clause 3 and 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and to discuss pending litigation of Gatto versus the town. The chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating and/or litigation position of the Airport Commission.
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
How do you vote, Mr. Viscarin?
I vote aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Not to return
It's an open session.
to open session.
Tony said he will be there tomorrow.
I'm sorry?
Will Tony be able to make the meeting tomorrow? Is that what he
Yeah,
said?
he said he would, yeah.
Okay, you have some contracts for us?
Tough one for me to read that.
Catering agreement.
You want to sign the catering agreement,